Hello to you beautiful beings of light, my family of courageous souls having this wonderful, fabulous life, right? Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Claudia, and today I'm going to be reading you a story. Now, we had determined in the very last video that of all the questions that I get, one of them is how do you start a spiritual journey? How do you identify your soul? How do you integrate all of it? Well, it's a process, and I think one of the best ways for me to help you is for me to begin telling you about my soul's journey. And it is the soul that leads you. However, what happens at some point is we have to pay the rent. We have to be responsible. We have to fix the car or take care of the family or whatever. And pretty soon, the fears and pressures of life start caving in on us. And we don't have that free-spirited nature so much anymore. We have to go out into nature to reintegrate that. And that is your divine nature when you're free-spirited, happy, go lucky, etc. So for me, I had a pretty rough upbringing and childhood, and so I'm going to begin expressing to you through some of my stories what you experience. You'll create your own story. We all have our own walk through life, and there's nobody that's ever going to walk your shoes and have your thoughts about it. You know, I'm from a family of 10 people, and every single one of us can get together in a group and talk about an experience that we all shared. You know, maybe we went to the beach, maybe we went and saw an exhibit, maybe we had a picnic. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it was, traveled somewhere. But everyone had a different story about it. They had a different perception. They took events and things that happened along the way and put their own spin on it. And that is exactly how life is. You and I have our own walk through life. Nobody's ever going to walk that for you, and nobody can explain it but you. And that's the best thing for me to do, is to share with you ways in which you can identify when your spirit is active and when it's not. And that's going to help you to create the shift. So I'm going to read you a story today. This is one of the first stories that came to me because I don't have a lot of happy memories from my childhood, and it started pretty early for me. So this is my story, the beginning, and so we'll do a story this week, and we'll break it down a little bit next week, and I hope that during that time that we take, when I say next week, actually, I'm going to probably do stories in a series, do the story, and then do my breaking it down for you. And I hope that you will write your own individual memories. We'll take advantage of this to do that, and that can help you best. And you'll be able to ask questions along the way. So let's do that. Let's make it interactive. All right, this story is called I'm Outta Here. She was so tiny you might have missed her lying in her trundle bed, except that the covers were quivering. No more than a scrawny wee little thing, that's what Grandpa called her, especially compared to the hefty linebackers. That's what Mother called her brothers. Wee Thing had been a 5-pounder at birth, no bigger than a sack of sugar, and small in comparison to the boys, the brothers, who had been much larger and closer to 10 pounds each. At that moment, though, nothing mattered. As tears streaked down her face, spilling past her ears, puddling on her pillow. This, in turn, was tickling her neck, which was increasing her already agitated state. Although the crying was subsided, her scrawny body was still shaking, and her lower lip wouldn't stop quivering, betraying her attempts at stoicism. Wee Thing wiped at the offending moisture on her neck as if swatting a pesky fly. Her feelings had gone from frustration to sadness, which were fading as anger began to take control of her mind. Nothing made any sense, and her thoughts were a jumbled mess as she tried to sort through what had happened. The pain of the smacks on her bum, there had been two, still stung, surprising her, causing the first quavering of her lip as she tried to hold back the tears. Looking at her mom in shock, her eyes silently pleaded to understand. Boy, Mom had gotten angry all right, but why Wee Thing had no idea. Then her oldest brother, the mean one, had removed her on Mom's orders, flinging her onto her bed. If that wasn't bad enough, her arm hurt now, too, from where his hand had gripped her so tightly. It was too dangerous around her brother for her to allow any signs of weakness to betray her tender heart and fragility, but her body began to shake against her will when it struck the bed. This escalated her attempts to hold in everything, but overall would be useless as her resolve cracked, tears filling her eyes. From there, her silence turned to stifled sobs as flood waters breached the crack. Her big brother sniggered in delight at causing this breach in her dam, infuriating her even more. From there, a shift occurred, like an engine being fired up as she moved from pain toward outright anger. Too young to comprehend her feelings, but as the tears multiplied, it occurred to her that she surely must have done something wrong to deserve this. She just couldn't think of what it was. In the space of a few moments, little Princess had been violently thrust from her world of laughter at the castle, where she'd been joyously twirling, sending her gown billowing out around her. In those few short moments, the ballroom disappeared as she'd been swatted, roused about, and then thrust into the darkness and isolation of her bedroom and the cold damp of the sheets. Her former happiness completely dissolved. Displaced by pain and confusion, everything stopped as she'd wondered, what did I do? After lying there with that question for the briefest of moments, the next thought came with solid certainty. Well, I sure didn't do anything to deserve that. Almost a question, but then the truth was out. With that, she sat bolt upright, scrawny legs straight out in front of her. She threw back the covers and wiped the tears from her face. The very next thought came with indignation, followed by determination. If that's how it's going to be, I'm out of here. And just like that, she was up, barefooted, marched her scrawny frame on those stick-like legs down the stairs and out the back porch door. The outhouse was back there, so no one thought anything of it when the back door abruptly tapped shut. She wouldn't have cared if it had slammed, but she was too tiny to affect the force for it. Mom gave the briefest of glances when she thought she heard something, but there were already too many kids to keep track of them all, so she went back to her knitting. Around the house, past the barn, the chickens, the cows, the fruit trees, she marched. Into the woods, crossed the creek. It didn't matter, not one iota that it was night, and the only light shone from the stars overhead, and they were mostly shadowed in and out of light by clouds and tree limbs. No, she didn't care. She was never going back. Wee Thing was done with all that forever. Single-minded in purpose, she went on until she reached his house. And then she startled Grandpa by first making scratching and soft grunting noises with her efforts to reach the handle to open his door. Finally paying off, the door yielded as she managed it on the very tips of her bare toes, which were now muddied from her trek. As the handle turned and the door began to open, Grandpa watched the wee thing fascinated as she finally achieved her goal, pushing past the door, leaving it open as she headed straight toward him. At this late hour, Grandpa was startled. What was this littlest angel doing here? Her only goal she made apparent by marching straight over to the couch where he sat and clambering up. Grandpa thought he might have to help until she managed the hill and scooched her little bum right down beside him without saying a single word. Grandpa was putting some ashes in the cuff of his pant leg, and smoke curled around him in a swirly cloud. He could make smoke rings, which she didn't notice tonight, and there was an unsteady jerky sort of thrumming coming from the oxygen machine beside him, which she avoided looking at. It made her scared. He took one look at her. She was now staring straight ahead, and by golly, he thought, isn't that the darndest thing? She's watching TV with me. That had never happened before. He left the door that was still hanging open for just a moment, even though the night bugs started coming in. He knew something was up by her lower lip, which was stubbornly thrust out, no longer quavering. His usual dour expression was about to be betrayed by his lips curled into a smile at the sweetness of her. Didn't take long before she let out a big sigh. Wee Thing's eyes and body finally found their rest as she slid into a soft heap, safe at last beside him. Safe at last beside him. When you're 3.5, the world can be a tough place. It's said that the years between birth and 5 years old are the foundational years, forming the core personality of the child. From there through youth into teen years and up to age 25 or so, the child is given experiences, building blocks, if you will, that further define who the child will become and is becoming. I came into this world knowing that I would not have a tolerance for injustice. I know who I am. I suspect you know who you are too. Thank you for listening to my story. And in the next